Maya Chen pushed her rusty shopping cart through the narrow aisles of Wong's corner market, the wheels squeaking with each turn. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the cramped store that served the outer district of New Shanghai Colony. At 19, she worked 3 jobs just to afford the tiny apartment she shared with her grandmother, but today felt different somehow. The bell above the door chimed as someone entered. Maya glanced up from comparing prices on instant noodles and froze. The figure in the doorway stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like oil on water and eyes the color of molten gold. Ancient scars crisscrossed visible skin, and when the creature moved, she caught glimpses of partially healed wounds beneath tattered clothing. Other customers quickly paid and left, whispering nervously. Mr. Wong disappeared into his back office with unusual speed. The dragon being moved slowly through the store, occasionally picking up items and studying the prices before setting them down with obvious disappointment. Maya watched as the creature examined a simple can of soup, turning it over in massive hands that could easily crush her skull. The price tag read 15 credits. The dragon reached into a worn pouch and counted out exactly 12 credits and 37 cents. After a long moment, those golden eyes dimmed with resignation, and the can went back on the shelf. Something twisted in Maya's chest. She recognized that look of disappointment, had worn it herself countless times when choosing between food and medicine for her grandmother. The dragon moved toward the exit, empty-handed, shoulders sagging with defeat. "Wait!" Maya called out before she could stop herself. The dragon turned, surprise flickering across features that seemed carved from living stone. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of that ancient face. This was no mighty beast from the stories. This was someone struggling, someone hungry. "I saw you looking at the soup," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I was thinking of making a big pot tonight. Would you like to join me for dinner?" Those golden eyes widened. "You would invite me, a Dracorian, into your home?" Maya shrugged, trying to appear casual despite her racing heart. "My grandmother always said the table gets lonely with just 2 people. Besides, you look like you could use a good meal." The dragon stared at her for a long moment. "I am Corvash the Exiled. I have not tasted kindness in 73 years. I'm Maya, and everyone deserves kindness." She gestured toward her cart. "I was planning to make enough for an army anyway. Grandmother's recipes tend to multiply when you're not paying attention." Corvash's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. "I have no way to repay such generosity." "Who said anything about payment? Come on, let's get some real ingredients. Can't make proper soup with just 1 can." Maya began filling her cart with vegetables, spices, and a decent cut of meat that would normally be far beyond her budget. She caught Corvash watching her with wonder as she selected items with the practiced eye of someone who knew how to stretch every credit. "You shop like a warrior preparing for siege," Corvash observed. Maya laughed. "Close. I'm a college student preparing for finals week. Same principle, different battlefield." At the checkout, Mr. Wong had reluctantly returned, his eyes darting nervously between Maya and her unusual companion. The total came to 68 credits, nearly half her food budget for the month. Maya handed over her payment card without hesitation. "Maya," Corvash said quietly as they loaded the bags into her hover cart, "why do this? Your people and mine have been at war for generations." She paused, considering the question. "Maybe that's exactly why I should do it. Someone has to be the first to stop fighting." The walk to her apartment complex took 20 minutes through narrow streets, lined with vendors hawking everything from synthetic silk to questionable street food. Corvash moved carefully, clearly trying to make himself as small as possible to avoid frightening the other pedestrians. Despite this, People stared and whispered, some with fear, others with curiosity. "Are you really exiled?" Maya asked as they waited for the elevator. Corvash nodded slowly. "I spoke against the war, said it was meaningless, that too much blood had been spilled on both sides. The High Council declared me traitor to my own species. So you're here alone?" "I have been alone for 7 decades, child. Alone and tired." The elevator shuddered to life, carrying them to the 14th floor. Maya's apartment was tiny by any standard, but she had made it warm with second-hand furniture and plants that somehow thrived despite the artificial light. Her grandmother, Wei, looked up from her medical texts as they entered. "Nai, we have a guest for dinner," Maya announced in Mandarin, then switched to standard. "Grandmother, this is Corvash." Wei adjusted her thick glasses and studied their visitor with the clinical eye of a retired doctor. After a moment, she smiled and spoke in heavily accented standard. "You look thin. Maya cooks good. You eat." Corvash bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect that seemed to come from centuries of tradition. "Honored elder, I am unworthy of your hospitality." Wei waved dismissively. "Nonsense. You help Maya in kitchen. These old hands not so steady anymore." What followed was perhaps the strangest cooking lesson of Maya's life. Corvash's massive hands proved surprisingly delicate as he diced vegetables with the precision of someone who had clearly done this before. He seasoned the broth with instincts that spoke of years of practice, adding herbs that complemented Wei's traditional recipe in unexpected ways. "You cook like someone who knows hunger," Wei observed, watching Corvash work. "I have known much hunger, honored elder, but also much joy in feeding others. Long ago." As the soup simmered, they sat around the small table, steam rising between them like incense. Corvash spoke of his homeworld, of crystal cities and floating gardens, of a time before the war when Dracorians and humans traded freely among the stars. His voice carried the weight of centuries, but also a warmth that emerged as he shared memories of better times. Maya found herself leaning forward, captivated by stories of worlds she had only read about in school. Wei nodded along, occasionally asking questions that revealed her own deep knowledge of galactic history. "You were a chef," Wei said suddenly. It wasn't a question. Corvash's smile was sad, but genuine. "Among other things, I once cooked for the High Council itself, before they decided my words were more dangerous than my recipes." When they finally ate, the soup was unlike anything Maya had ever tasted. The familiar comfort of her grandmother's recipe had been elevated to something almost magical. Each spoonful carried layers of flavor that seemed to tell stories of their own. "This is incredible," Maya said, refilling her bowl for the 3rd time. "Food tastes better when shared with friends," Corvash replied, and Maya noticed he said "friends" without hesitation. As the evening wore on, they talked about everything and nothing. Maya shared her dreams of becoming a xenobiologist, her struggles to afford school while caring for her grandmother. Corvash spoke of his hope that someday the war would end, that both species might remember what they had once been to each other. When it came time for Corvash to leave, Maya found herself reluctant to say goodbye. She packed the leftover soup into containers, adding extra portions she claimed were mistakes. "Maya," Corvash said as he prepared to go, "you have given me something I thought lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope." He handed her something small and warm. Maya looked down to find a scale that seemed to pulse with its own inner light, deep blue shot through with veins of silver. "This is a trust scale," Corvash explained. "It carries a piece of my essence. If you ever need help, hold it tight and call my name. I will come." Maya started to protest that it was too much, but Corvash was already walking away, his massive form disappearing into the shadows between the apartment buildings. She stood in her doorway for a long time, turning the scale over in her hands and wondering what she had gotten herself into. Back in the kitchen, Wei was already washing the dishes. "That one carries great pain," she said without looking up. "Yeah, I noticed." "But also great strength. You did good thing tonight, Maya." As Maya helped finish the cleanup, she couldn't shake the feeling that this evening had changed something fundamental. She had always believed in doing what was right, but tonight she had acted on instinct, following her heart instead of her head. 3 days had passed since Maya's dinner with Corvash, and she found herself checking the trust scale obsessively. The dragon hadn't returned to Wong's Corner Market, and she was beginning to worry. The scale remained warm but dim, offering no clues about its former owner's well-being. Maya was rushing between her morning classes and her afternoon shift at the data processing center when her personal communicator buzzed with an emergency alert. Her blood ran cold as she read the message from her apartment building's security system. Unauthorized entry detected, multiple armed individuals, residents advised to evacuate immediately. Her grandmother was alone in that apartment. Maya's hands shook as she tried calling Wei's personal line. No answer. She tried the building's emergency line and got a busy signal. Panic rising in her throat. She ducked into an empty classroom and pulled out the trust scale. The moment her fingers closed around it, the scale blazed with brilliant blue light. "Corvash," she whispered urgently, "I need help. Something's wrong at my apartment. My grandmother—" The scale grew almost too hot to hold, then suddenly went cold and dark. Maya stared at it for a moment, wondering if she had just wasted her one chance for help on what might be a false alarm. Then she was running, pushing through crowds of students, and leaping onto the first transit pod heading toward the residential district. The scene that greeted her at the apartment complex made her stomach drop. 6 sleek vehicles with military markings surrounded the building, their engines still humming with residual heat. Armored figures moved through the lobby with the precise coordination of an elite unit. These weren't local security forces or even colonial police. These were Dracorian war hunters, the most feared military unit in the galaxy. Maya tried to enter through the main lobby and was immediately blocked by a towering Dracorian soldier whose armor bore the triple claw insignia of a pack leader. "Building under quarantine," the soldier growled in heavily accented standard. "Return to your dwelling place." "I live here," Maya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My grandmother is upstairs. What's going on?" The soldier's reptilian eyes studied her with cold calculation. "You will wait with the others." Others turned out to be a small crowd of residents huddled near the building's meditation garden, all looking confused and frightened. Maya spotted Mrs. Kim from the 3rd floor and rushed over to her. "What happened? Did you see my grandmother?" Mrs. Kim shook her head, clutching her own granddaughter close. "They came so fast, Maya, sealed the building and started searching apartment by apartment. They're looking for someone." A terrible understanding began to dawn on Maya. She pulled out her communicator and tried to access the building's security feeds, but the network was completely blocked. Whatever was happening upstairs, the war hunters didn't want any record of it. "Grandmother," Maya breathed, and the word carried all her fear. That's when she heard it. A roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Not human, not Dracorian, but something far older and infinitely more dangerous. The war hunters in the lobby suddenly moved with increased urgency, speaking rapidly into their communication devices. A window on the 14th floor exploded outward in a shower of glass and twisted metal. Through the gap, Maya caught a glimpse of something massive and terrible, wreathed in what looked like silver fire. Then Corvash emerged, but not as the broken exile she had met 3 days ago. This was Corvash as he truly was, 30 feet of living fury, scales blazing with inner light, wings that blocked out the afternoon sun. In his massive claws, he carried two figures with impossible gentleness. Wei hung limp in one arm, unconscious but breathing. In the other, a Dracorian war hunter who had clearly been used to cushion their fall. Corvash landed in the courtyard with earth-shaking force, his golden eyes burning with rage as he surveyed the assembled troops. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of ancient power. "Release the human elder to me, and I will consider allowing you to leave this place alive." The pack leader stepped forward, weapons charging with deadly energy. "Corvash the Exile, by order of the High Council, you will surrender yourself for judgment. Your crimes against the Dracorian people demand—" "My crimes?" Corvash's laugh was like thunder. "I spoke truth to power. I said this war was madness. For this I was stripped of rank, home, and honor. But touching this human family, that crime is yours, not mine." Maya pushed through the crowd of residents, ignoring shouts from the soldiers. "Corvash, is she hurt?" The great dragon's expression softened as he saw her. With incredible care, he lowered Wei to the ground near Maya's feet. The elderly woman was unconscious but unharmed, though Maya could see stress marks around her eyes. "They invaded her home seeking me," Corvash said quietly. "When she would not reveal my location, they began to persuade her. I arrived before permanent damage was done." Maya knelt beside her grandmother, checking her pulse and breathing. Medical training from years of caring for Wei kicked in automatically. "She's in shock but stable. What did they want with you?" "The High Council learned of our meeting. Apparently, an exiled dragon sharing a meal with humans is considered an act of sedition worthy of death." The pack leader raised his weapon, a massive energy cannon that hummed with lethal charge. "Enough talk. You will come with us, exile. The humans will not be harmed if you surrender peacefully." Corvash slowly turned to face the assembled war hunters. Even at his full height, he was outnumbered 12-1 by some of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Maya saw him calculating the odds, saw the moment he decided that her grandmother's safety was worth any sacrifice. "I will come," Corvash said, beginning to fold his wings. "But know this. If any harm comes to these humans after my surrender, I will return. And when I do, not even the High Council will protect you." "No." Maya stood, placing herself between Corvash and the soldiers. "This is insane. He saved my grandmother's life. How is that a crime?" The pack leader's attention shifted to her with predatory interest. "Ah, the human who corrupted an exile with false kindness. You will also face judgment." "She will face nothing," Corvash snarled, his calm facade cracking. "She is innocent of any wrongdoing." "Innocence is a human concept," the pack leader replied. "The High Council wishes to understand how a simple human managed to manipulate a dragon into betraying his own species. Your friend will provide valuable insight." Maya felt ice in her veins. They weren't just here for Corvash. They wanted her too, probably as evidence in whatever trial awaited him. She glanced around the courtyard, noting the positioning of the soldiers, the distance to possible cover, the frightened faces of her neighbors. That's when she noticed something strange. The other Dracorian soldiers seemed uncomfortable with their pack leader's words. Several were exchanging glances that looked almost guilty. One young soldier near the building's entrance kept glancing at Corvash with what might have been recognition. Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She stepped closer to Corvash, placing her hand on one of his massive claws. "If you're so concerned about human manipulation," she said loudly enough for all the soldiers to hear, "then explain why 12 elite war hunters were needed to arrest one exiled dragon. Either he's incredibly dangerous, in which case you should be grateful someone convinced him to be peaceful, or he's not a real threat. in which case this entire operation is a waste of military resources. The pack leader's eyes narrowed dangerously. Human logic has no place in Dracorian justice. But efficiency does, Maya pressed on, noticing more uncomfortable shuffling among the soldiers. And I'm guessing the High Council doesn't know that you terrorized an innocent civilian to flush out your target. My grandmother is a retired doctor who has spent her life helping people. What honor is there in threatening someone like that? The young soldier by the entrance suddenly spoke up. Pack Leader Skreth, perhaps we should return with the exile and file a complete report. The human female makes valid points about— Silence, Skreth roared. You forget your place, hunting brother Vorthok. But the damage was done. Maya could see doubt spreading through the ranks like wildfire. These were warriors trained to protect honor and defend the innocent, not terrorize elderly humans in their homes. Corvash seemed to sense the shifting mood as well. When he spoke again, his voice carried decades of military authority. War hunters of the Crimson Talon Company, I know many of you by reputation. You are honorable soldiers led astray by a pack leader more concerned with advancement than justice. I will come with you willingly. But I ask this. Remember what you swore when you took your warrior's oath. Remember who you chose to become. The effect was immediate and electric. Several soldiers actually took a step back from Skreth, their weapons lowering slightly. Maya realized that Corvash wasn't just any exile. He had been someone important, someone these warriors remembered with respect. Vorthak stepped forward, his weapon now pointed at his own pack leader. Corvash the Truth Speaker, former war leader of the Silver Wing Battalion, architect of the Kepler defense and hero of the Andorian campaign. I know who you are, and I know what you sacrificed for honor. Pack Leader Skreth, I formally challenge your authority on grounds of conduct unbefitting a war hunter. The courtyard fell deadly silent. Even Maya, with her limited knowledge of Dracorian culture, understood the significance of what had just happened. A subordinate challenging a pack leader was tantamount to a death sentence unless the challenge was supported by the majority of the unit. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, one by one, other war hunters began to turn their weapons toward Skreth. Not all of them, perhaps 7 of the 12, but enough to create a standoff. Skreth's face contorted with rage. Traitors! Fools! The High Council will have your scales for this. The High Council will hear truth, Vorthak replied calmly. That Corvash the Truth Speaker committed no crime save speaking with humans as equals. That you exceeded mission parameters by threatening civilians. That you brought dishonor to the Crimson Talon Company through your actions. Maya watched in amazement as the ancient dragon slowly began to smile. It seems, Corvash said quietly, that hope is not yet dead in this galaxy. But Maya's relief was short-lived. Through the chaos of the confrontation, she noticed movement on the surrounding rooftops. More figures in military gear, these bearing different insignia. As her eyes adjusted, she counted at least 20 additional soldiers taking position around the courtyard. Her grandmother chose that moment to regain consciousness, sitting up slowly and looking around in confusion. Maya? What is all this noise? That's when the first shot was fired. The energy blast came from one of the rooftop positions, striking pack leader Skreth squarely in the chest. He collapsed instantly, his armor smoking from the impact. The courtyard erupted into chaos as the war hunters dove for cover, unsure who was shooting at whom. Maya grabbed her grandmother and rolled behind a concrete planter, just as more shots rained down from above. These weren't Dracorian weapons. The energy signatures were all wrong, and the tactical coordination spoke of human military training. Grandmother, stay down, Maya hissed, her mind racing. First Dracorian war hunters, now human soldiers. What had started as a simple arrest had become something much larger and more dangerous. Corvash roared and launched himself skyward, his massive form drawing fire from multiple positions. Maya watched in terror as energy blasts scorched his scales. but the ancient dragon pressed forward with determined fury. He landed on the nearest rooftop with earth-shaking force, and she heard screams of pain and surprise from the hidden snipers. Vorthak slid into cover behind the same planter where Maya crouched with Wei. "Human female," he said urgently. "These are not colonial forces. The armor markings indicate Terran Federation Special Operations." Maya's blood ran cold. The Terran Federation was the most militaristic branch of human government, notorious for their humans-first policies and barely contained hostility toward all alien species. If they were here, it meant someone very high up had decided that Corvash's friendship with humans was a threat to the war effort. "They're here to kill him," Maya realized. "Both sides want him dead." "Worse," Vorthak replied, checking his weapon's charge. "They want to kill him while making it appear that Dracorian forces were responsible. Perfect excuse to escalate the conflict." Another roar echoed across the courtyard as Corvash cleared the first rooftop and moved to the second. Maya could see human soldiers in advanced combat armor falling back under his assault, but there were so many of them. Even a dragon couldn't fight an entire special operations company. Wei struggled to sit up, her medical training overriding her confusion. "Maya, there are wounded soldiers. We should help them." "Grandmother, no. It's too dangerous." But Wei was already moving, crawling toward a fallen war hunter who had been caught in the crossfire. Maya cursed and followed, grabbing the emergency medical kit she always carried. Together, they reached the injured Dracorian, a young female whose armor had been pierced by a Federation energy weapon. The soldier's eyes widened in shock as Wei began applying pressure to the wound. Why do you help me?" "Because you're hurt," Wei said simply, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. "Maya, I need the emergency coagulant from the kit." Maya fumbled for the medical supplies while energy blasts continued to light up the sky above them. She found herself working alongside her grandmother to save the life of an alien soldier while their friend fought for his life against overwhelming odds. That's when the real surprise arrived. The distinctive whine of faster-than-light engines filled the air as 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace directly above the apartment complex. These weren't human vessels or Dracorian warships. These were something else entirely, sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Maya looked up in wonder as the ships settled into perfect formation above the courtyard. Each vessel was roughly the size of a small frigate, but their design was unlike anything she had ever seen. They looked almost alive, their hulls shifting color like oil on water. The shooting stopped abruptly as both human and Dracorian forces stared up at the new arrivals. Even Corvash paused in his aerial combat to hover uncertainly in the sky. A beam of soft golden light descended from the lead ship, and a figure materialized in the center of the courtyard. Maya gasped as she recognized the species from her xenobiology textbooks. An ethereal, one of the oldest and most mysterious races in the galaxy. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger species, preferring to observe from a distance. The ethereal stood nearly 10 feet tall, its translucent skin revealing flowing patterns of bioluminescent energy beneath. When it spoke, its voice resonated inside Maya's mind rather than through her ears. "Enough!" The single word carried such authority that every weapon in the courtyard immediately lowered. Maya felt a profound sense of peace wash over her, as if the very concept of violence had temporarily become impossible to comprehend. The ethereal's attention turned to Maya, and she felt those ancient eyes looking directly into her soul. "Maya Chen of New Shanghai Colony, you have done something remarkable. In a galaxy torn by hatred and suspicion, you offered kindness to an enemy. This simple act has created ripples that now threaten to become a tidal wave." Maya tried to speak but found her voice caught in her throat. The ethereal smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both alien and profoundly familiar. "Do not fear, young one. We have been watching this conflict for decades, waiting for a sign that both species might be capable of growth beyond their current limitations. You have provided that sign." The ethereal turned to address the assembled soldiers, both human and Dracorian. "Warriors of two proud species, you have been manipulated by those who profit from endless war. The High Council of the Dracorian Empire and the War Cabinet of the Terran Federation have deliberately escalated this conflict for their own political purposes. The exile of Corvash, the Truth Speaker, was orchestrated specifically to prevent peace negotiations that were beginning to show promise." Vorthak stepped forward, his weapon forgotten. "Peace negotiations, but the High Council told us—" "The High Council told you what they needed you to believe," the ethereal replied sadly. "Just as your human counterparts were told that this operation was necessary to prevent alien infiltration of human society. Both lies designed to maintain a profitable status quo." Maya felt her world shifting as the implications sank in. "You're saying the war is fake?" "Not fake, but artificially prolonged. There are those on both sides who have grown wealthy and powerful through this conflict. They fear nothing more than the possibility of their peoples working together." The ethereal gestured, and holographic displays appeared in the air around them. Maya saw images of secret meetings, financial transactions, weapons shipments to both sides from the same sources. The scope of the deception was staggering. "However," the ethereal continued, "your simple act of kindness has created an opportunity. By treating Corvash as a friend rather than an enemy, you have demonstrated that cooperation between your species is not only possible but natural. This terrifies those who seek to maintain division." Corvash landed heavily in the courtyard, his massive form settling protectively near Maya and Wei. Blood seeped from several wounds, but his eyes burned with new understanding. "That's why they wanted both of us dead. Not as punishment, but as proof that friendship between our peoples leads only to destruction." "Precisely," the ethereal confirmed, "but their plan has failed, thanks to the courage of warriors like Vorthak, who chose honor over blind obedience." One of the Human Federation soldiers, a captain by his rank insignia, stepped forward and removed his helmet. His face was young, scarred from combat, but his eyes held a weariness that spoke of too many battles fought for unclear reasons. "Are you telling us that soldiers on both sides have been dying for nothing?" "Not for nothing," the ethereal replied gently. "For the profit and power of a few. But that chapter of your species' history ends today, if you choose to let it." The captain looked around the courtyard at the mix of human and Dracorian soldiers, at Maya still kneeling beside the wounded war hunter, at Corvash towering over them all like a guardian rather than a threat. "What do you want us to do?" The ethereal's smile brightened. "Return to your respective commands and tell them what you have witnessed here. Tell them that Maya Chen, a human student working 3 jobs to care for her grandmother, showed more wisdom and courage than all their councils combined. Tell them that if a 19-year-old girl can see past centuries of hatred to offer friendship to a former enemy, then surely trained diplomats can find a path to lasting peace." Maya felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. "But I'm nobody special. I saw someone who needed help." "That," the ethereal said with profound warmth, "is exactly what makes you special. In a galaxy where compassion has become revolutionary, you chose to be a revolutionary." The ethereal ships began to rise, preparing to depart as suddenly as they had arrived. But their captain had one final message. "Maya Chen, in recognition of your courage and wisdom, the Ethereal Council hereby grants you protected status under galactic law. Any action taken against you or your family will be considered an act of aggression against the Ethereal Collective. We do not make such offers lightly." As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, Maya found herself surrounded by soldiers from both sides. But instead of weapons pointed at her, she saw hands extended in greeting, in respect, in hope. Vorthak knelt formally before her. "Maya Chen, I request permission to accompany you as honor guard. It would be my privilege to protect one who has shown such courage." The human captain nodded agreement. "My unit volunteers to provide additional security. After what we've learned today, it's the least we can do." Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, human and Dracorian alike, all united by a shared understanding of how badly they had been deceived. Her grandmother squeezed her hand, pride shining in her aged eyes. "So what happens now?" Maya asked. Corvash settled his massive bulk more comfortably in the courtyard, his wounds already beginning to heal. "Now we go shopping for groceries. I believe I promised to teach you more of my recipes." Maya laughed, despite everything, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Just groceries?" "Just groceries," Corvash confirmed, "though I suspect we'll need a much larger pot this time." As the sun set over New Shanghai Colony, an unlikely group made their way to Wong's Corner Market. Maya Chen, the college student who had accidentally started a revolution by buying soup ingredients. Corvash, the truth speaker, no longer exiled but still preferring the company of friends to the politics of power. Wei Chen, whose medical skills were about to become very useful as wounded soldiers from both sides, sought her care. And a growing convoy of human and Dracorian warriors who had chosen honor over hatred. Mr. Wong took one look at the approaching crowd and immediately began calculating how much food he would need to order. In the weeks that followed, his small market would become an unofficial embassy, a place where beings from across the galaxy came to share meals and stories rather than exchange gunfire. The war wasn't over. Centuries of mistrust couldn't be healed overnight. But it had changed, transformed from a conflict of hatred to a competition over who could provide better aid and friendship to the other side. Maya often watched the news broadcasts with amazement, as planets that had been battlegrounds became trading partners, as former enemies worked together to explore new worlds and solve old problems. And it all started with a simple decision to treat someone with kindness when they needed it most. Maya kept the trust scale in a place of honor on her mantelpiece, though she never needed to use it again. Corvash had become a permanent fixture in their small apartment, sleeping curled up in the living room and filling their home with the scent of exotic spices and the sound of ancient stories. Sometimes the most powerful weapons in the universe are a bowl of soup and an open heart. Maya Chen learned that lesson in a grocery store, and in learning it, she changed the course of galactic history, not through conquest or politics or grand gestures, but through the radical act of seeing someone as a friend rather than an enemy. The trust scale continued to pulse with gentle blue light, but now it carried a different message. Not a call for help, but a reminder that in a universe full of wonders and terrors, the greatest miracle of all is the moment when strangers choose to become family. The trust scale pulsed gently in her pocket, warm against her fingers. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't regret this choice. In a galaxy torn by war and suspicion, sometimes the most radical act was simply treating someone with kindness. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime energy, unaware that in a small apartment on the 14th floor, a human girl and an ancient dragon had just planted the seeds of something that would soon shake the foundations of an empire.